I'm Maya Foster, and I'm 26 years old. The day of my grandfather's funeral was supposed to honor his memory, but instead, it became the moment that revealed who my family truly was. While everyone else received millions from Grandpa William's estate, I got handed a plain white envelope. The humiliation was suffocating. My mother Diane sat there in her designer black suit, barely hiding her amusement. My father Richard checked his expensive watch, mentally calculating his $30 million inheritance. My brother Tyler smirked like this was the best joke he'd heard all year. And my cousin Stephanie whispered to her husband, probably doing the math on her own windfall. When the lawyer said my name and held up that envelope, the room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. My mother actually patted my knee and said, "Well, honey, I'm sure there's something meaningful inside. Maybe a nice letter." But her eyes told a different story. They all thought it was hilarious. Poor Maya, the granddaughter who'd spent every summer helping Grandpa with his empire, had been left with nothing while everyone else became millionaires. What they didn't know was that envelope would change everything. The laughter followed me down the hallway as I left that mahogany-paneled office. My hands trembled as I waited for the elevator, alone except for my reflection in the polished steel doors. I couldn't wait any longer. I tore open the envelope right there. Inside was a first-class plane ticket to Monaco, dated for next week, and a single sentence written in Grandpa William's distinctive handwriting. "Trust activated on your 26th birthday. Sweetheart, time to claim what's always been yours." But that wasn't what made my breath catch. There was also a business card reading, "Alexander Fontaine, Private Financial Secretary," with elegant gold lettering, and on the back, Grandpa's note said, "He's managing your trust." The third item was a bank statement from Credit Suisse, addressed to Maya R. Foster Trust. The balance made the elevator spin around me. $347 million. I counted the zeros 3 times. 4 times. This had to be some kind of mistake or cruel joke. But the letterhead looked legitimate, the account numbers seemed real, and that was definitely Grandpa's handwriting. That night, I called the international number on the statement. After extensive verification, a Swiss banker with perfect English confirmed what I couldn't process. "Yes, Miss Foster. Your trust was established when you were 16, and has been professionally managed for the past decade. Your grandfather was quite specific about the activation date coinciding with your 26th birthday. But I never signed anything," I whispered. "Your grandfather established it as the settler. As a minor, your consent wasn't required. The trust has been generating returns from various international business holdings." Business holdings. Those words sent chills down my spine. I remembered all those chess games where Grandpa would discuss hypothetical business scenarios, asking my opinion on hotel management and market positioning. I'd thought he was just making conversation. He'd been training me. A week later, I stood in Alexander Fontaine's private office in Monaco, floor-to-ceiling windows offering impossible views of the Mediterranean. He was tall, impeccably dressed, with the kind of confidence that comes from managing billions. "Miss Foster," he said warmly, "your grandfather was not only a dear friend, but one of the most strategic investors I've ever known. He began planning your financial future when you were still a child." Alexander opened a thick folder. "Your trust currently holds controlling interests in several major properties. The Monte Carlo Bay Resort and Casino generates approximately $40 million annually. The Belmont Grand Casino and Resort in Las Vegas produces roughly $145 million per year. There's also commercial real estate in London, Tokyo, and Sydney." I gripped the arms of my chair. This couldn't be real. "Your grandfather also ensured you received a modest stipend of $60,000 annually, enough to live comfortably as a teacher, but not enough to attract attention. The money in your savings account came from distributions you weren't aware of." Everything clicked into place. Why I'd never stressed about rent like my colleagues did. Why Grandpa had always seemed so confident about my future. "Alexander," I said slowly, "how much am I actually worth?" He consulted another document. "As of this morning, the trust's net value is approximately $1.2 billion. The room tilted. "Billion? You're a billionaire, Maya. You always have been." That afternoon, I toured the Monte Carlo Bay Resort with the general manager, Philippe Dubois. 300 luxury suites, 5 restaurants, a casino floor buzzing with life. The property has maintained 94% occupancy for 3 years, Philippe explained. "Your trust has been an excellent owner. My property, My trust. My billion-dollar empire. That evening, back at my five-star hotel, I thought about Grandpa's strategy. While my family received immediate gratification, he'd given me something far more valuable, the chance to discover my own strength before I needed to use it. He'd wanted me to see how they really treated me before I gained the power to change everything. I remembered the will reading. Their laughter. My mother's cruel comment about Grandpa not loving me enough. Tyler's smirk. Stephanie's condescending tone. They'd shown me exactly who they were. Now I would show them who I'd become. I pulled out my phone and called Alexander. I want to acquire a shipping company in Portland, Thompson Maritime, worth around $30 million. My father's company. An interesting first acquisition, Alexander said carefully. Are you certain? I looked out at the bay, Monaco harbor, at the yachts worth more than most people's houses. I'm not just certain, I'm strategic. Grandpa taught me to think several moves ahead. It was time to play chess. Back in Portland, nothing had changed except me. I returned to my small apartment while my family remained completely oblivious to who I'd become. The contrast was almost funny. That week, I had breakfast with my parents. My father talked about his $30 million inheritance like it was the greatest fortune imaginable. If only he knew I'd spent the morning on a video call discussing a resort purchase in Dubai that cost more than his entire company. How was Monaco? My mother asked with barely concealed amusement. Did you spend too much on your little vacation? It was educational, I replied, taking a sip of coffee that cost more per pound than Tyler earned in a week. I still can't believe you actually went, Tyler said, scrolling through luxury car websites. That place is for people, with real money. Must have been awkward. You adapt, I said mildly. What they didn't know was that I'd spent the previous afternoon having my lawyers prepare a preliminary acquisition offer for Foster Maritime. My research was troubling. Dad's company was more vulnerable than I'd realized. He'd taken on significant debt for fleet expansion, and while the business was profitable, it was cash poor and over-leveraged. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen, my Vegas property manager. Foster Maritime analysis complete. They need capital injection within 6 months or they'll be forced to sell assets. Our offer could solve their problems immediately. I texted back. Prepare the offer. Anonymous acquisition through Neptune International Holdings. Generous terms, fast timeline. The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. Dad needed money desperately but was too proud to admit it. A mysterious foreign buyer with deep pockets would seem like a miracle, not a trap. The shipping company is doing well, Dad reported during breakfast. We're looking at expanding routes, maybe acquiring smaller competitors. How's the cash flow situation? I asked casually. Everyone stared at me like I'd spoken Mandarin. Maya, honey, my mother said with a patronizing laugh. You don't need to worry about business details. That's your father's expertise. I'm just curious. Grandpa always said cash flow was the most important metric. Dad's jaw tightened slightly. We're fine. The company is stable. But I'd seen the financial reports. They weren't fine. They were surviving month to month. After breakfast, I met with Patricia Wells, Portland's top luxury real estate agent. When I told her my budget, her entire demeanor shifted. Miss Foster, may I ask what line of work you're in? International business, real estate and hospitality investments. We spent the afternoon touring properties that cost more than my parents' entire neighborhood. $10 million estates, $12 million mansions. Finally, we arrived at the crown jewel, the Westfield estate, Patricia announced. $18 million. But the location and views are unparalleled. The house was magnificent. 20 acres overlooking the city. The kind of property that appeared in architectural magazines. From the master bedroom windows, I could see my parents' entire neighborhood far below. I'll take it, I said. Patricia nearly dropped her tablet. I'm sorry? The Westfield estate. I want to make an offer. Cash purchase. Full asking price. Close within 2 weeks. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Miss Foster, this is an $18 million property. Yes, I can count. I pulled out my phone and called my financial advisor. David, I need you to wire $18 million for a real estate purchase. As I gave the wire instructions, Patricia stood there with her mouth hanging open. I could see her recalculating everything she thought she knew about me. The offer on Foster Maritime arrived at Dad's office on Tuesday morning. He called me during my lunch break at school, his voice tight with stress. Maya, something unexpected happened. We received a buyout offer from some international investment group, completely out of nowhere. I put on my most concerned voice. Is that good or bad? I don't know. It's a really good offer. Almost too good. 45 million, 30% above book value. But they want an answer by Friday. Maybe they see potential you don't see. I suggested innocently. Maybe. Look, can you come to dinner Thursday? I want the whole family to discuss this. You've always been good with details. Good with details. If only he knew whose details he was really reviewing. Thursday's family dinner was tense. Dad spread financial documents across the dining room table like battle plans. The offer is 45 million, he announced. But if I sell, what do I do then? This company has been my life for 30 years. You retire, Tyler suggested. Travel, relax, enjoy the money. I studied the offer documents carefully, making sure my expression showed concern rather than satisfaction. The terms were exactly what I'd instructed, generous enough to tempt him, structured to solve his cash flow problems. Who is this company? I asked, pointing to the letterhead. Neptune International Holdings. Swiss-based investment firm. Very legitimate. What's their timeline for integration? Employee retention policies? Management structure? I continued reading. Everyone stared at me again. Maya, my mother said slowly, those are very specific questions for someone who teaches elementary school. Grandpa always talked about reading the fine print. These terms are actually quite good. They're offering to retain all employees for 3 years and maintain current management. Dad was studying me with a new expression. Maya, you're asking better questions than my business attorney did. Maybe I inherited more of Grandpa's business sense than anyone realized. I could see Dad's resolve wavering. The offer was too good. The financial relief too necessary. Friday afternoon at 4:47, Dad signed the papers. By 5:15, he'd sold his company to me. Moving day arrived 2 weeks later. I'd hired the most expensive moving company in Portland, the kind that relocated tech executives and celebrities. As trucks pulled up to the Westfield estate, I called my mother. I'm moving today. Oh, that's nice, honey. Did you find a bigger apartment? Something like that. You should come see it. Of course. What's the address? I gave her the Westfield estate address and waited. 10 minutes later, Dad called. His voice was strange, tight. Maya, did you give your mother the wrong address? No? Why? Because she's standing in front of the Westfield estate, the $18 million mansion that just sold. I smiled at my reflection in the enormous typelace. Front windows. I'm not in front of it, Dad. I'm in it. Silence. That's not funny, Maya. I'm not joking. Come up the driveway. I watched from the grand foyer as their modest sedan pulled up behind a moving truck. They sat in their car for a full minute, staring at the house like it might vanish. When they finally approached the front door, they moved like people in a dream. Hi, Mom, Dad, I said, opening the door. Welcome to my new home. They stepped inside slowly, taking in the marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the staircase that curved upward like something from a palace. Maya, Dad said carefully, how exactly did you buy this house? I made an offer. They accepted. An $18 million offer. Actually, $19 million. There was a bidding war. My mother grabbed Dad's arm for support. Honey, this isn't possible. You're a teacher. Former teacher. I resigned yesterday. I led them through the house, watching their faces as we toured rooms, larger than their entire first floor. The imported Italian marble kitchen. The library with floor-to-ceiling windows. The wine cellar stocked with bottles worth more than their monthly mortgage. Maya, Dad said as we stood in the master bedroom. You need to explain this right now. Explain what? Where the money came from. What's really going on? I walked to the window and looked down at the city spread below us, their neighborhood visible in the distance. Remember Grandpa's envelope? The letter? Yes. It wasn't just a letter. It was a plane ticket to Monaco, and notification that my trust had been activated. They stared at me blankly. Grandpa established a trust for me when I was 16. I've been a billionaire since my 26th birthday last month. Dad sat down heavily on the bed. That's impossible. Grandpa bought properties around the world and put them in my name. I own casinos in Monaco and Vegas, hotels in London and Singapore, commercial real estate across 3 continents. That envelope you all laughed at made me rich enough to buy anything I want. Billionaire? My mother whispered. 1.3 billion, actually. The silence was deafening. If this is true, Dad said finally, why didn't you tell us? I almost laughed. Tell you when? During the will reading when you were all laughing at me? When Mom said Grandpa didn't love me enough? When you asked me to help with administrative work because I was good with computers? We didn't mean. Yes, you did. You thought I was the leftover. The one who didn't matter. Maya, we're sorry. For what? For showing me exactly who you are? For proving you only value people based on their bank accounts? Dad stood up, his businessman instincts kicking in. Okay, let's discuss this rationally. If you have this kind of wealth, we should talk about trust structures, tax implications. Actually, Dad, there is something we should discuss. I pulled out my phone and opened an email. I acquired something recently. Neptune International Holdings, the foreign investment firm that bought your company? That's my shell company. I bought Foster Maritime. His face went pale. You bought my company? For 45 million. Quite generous considering the debt load and cash flow issues. Why would you do that? Because I could. Because I wanted to. Because you sold it without wondering if anyone in the family might be interested. Maya, my mother said desperately. This is insane. I can. And I did. It's mine now. Dad's face cycled through emotions I'd never seen before. Give it back. I shook my head. It's not for sale. That company is my life's work, was your life's work. Now it's my business investment. Maya. Dad's voice broke slightly. Please. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old Maya, the one who wanted everyone happy, who hated conflict. But then I remembered their laughter, their dismissive comments, their assumption that I was worthless. I'll see you both soon, I said gently. When you're ready to treat me like family, instead of like hired help. After they left, I stood alone in my magnificent house, looking out at views that cost $19 million. My phone buzzed with congratulations from property managers and meeting requests from business contacts. For the first time since opening Grandpa's envelope, I felt completely, perfectly alone. And surprisingly, that felt exactly right. 3 days later, Tyler called, his voice tight with anger. What the hell is going on, Maya? Good morning to you too, Tyler. Mom and Dad told me everything. Are you really some secret billionaire? I'm not secret anymore. This is insane. Do you really own Dad's company? I really do. Fine. You want to play hardball? I'll call our lawyers. I actually laughed. Tyler, I have the best legal team money can buy. Do you really want to spend 5 years in court battles you can't afford to win? He hung up. An hour later, Stephanie called, then Mom again, then Dad. All variations of the same conversation. Shock, anger, demands, threats, grudging requests for meetings. That evening, they all arrived at my gate like an intervention squad. Can I help you? I said through the intercom. Maya, it's your family. We need to talk. Did you make an appointment? Don't be ridiculous. We're your family. The family that laughed at me and threatened me with lawsuits? Please. Dad's voice came through. We can work this out. I considered it carefully. I'll make you a deal. You can come in, but we do this my way. You listen without interrupting. You acknowledge that everything I own legitimately. Otherwise, go home. Silence. Then, okay. Your way. I opened the gates. They sat on my sofa like defendants waiting for judgment while I took the chair facing them all. So, I said, what did you want to discuss? Dad cleared his throat. Maya, we owe you an apology. For what, specifically? For not understanding your inheritance. For not realizing what Grandpa William did for you. That's not what you need to apologize for. You're apologizing for being wrong about my money. You're not apologizing for treating me badly. Honey, we never treated you badly, my mother said. Love isn't what I felt during that will reading. Love isn't asking me to do clerical work while you planned how to spend millions. Tyler spoke up. Okay, we screwed up. We're sorry. But Maya, you bought Dad's company. That's not normal. Normal would have been asking if I wanted to be involved before selling to strangers. Normal would have been treating me like I mattered. So this is revenge? Dad asked. No. This is business. I bought a profitable company at a fair price. I'm living my life on my terms for the first time ever. What do you want from us? Mom asked quietly. I stood and walked to the window. I want you to understand that Maya, the overlooked granddaughter, doesn't exist anymore. Maya, the billionaire businesswoman, does. And she doesn't need your approval. Maya, Dad said desperately, I need that company back. Then you shouldn't have sold it. The room fell silent. There is one thing, I said finally. They looked up hopefully. I want public acknowledgements. All of you. For how you treated me at the will reading. Social media posts, wherever you announced your own inheritances. That's humiliating, Tyler said. Good. Now you know how I felt. And if we do this, Dad asked carefully, I'll consider selling back the company. It wasn't a promise, but it was hope. A week later, the acknowledgements appeared. Dad's ran in the business section. Richard Foster acknowledges that he significantly underestimated his daughter Maya's business acumen. Miss Foster has proven herself to be a sophisticated investor, and I deeply regret any dismissive comments I made. Mom's Facebook post was equally public. I want to apologize to my daughter Maya for suggesting her grandfather didn't care about her. I was completely wrong. Maya is an accomplished businesswoman who deserves respect. Tyler and Stephanie posted similar admissions on Instagram. The post generated significant attention. Local journalists started asking questions about the mysterious Maya Foster. I declined all interviews. As for Foster Maritime, I'd surprised everyone by keeping Dad on as general manager. Same office, same responsibilities. The only difference was he now reported to companies that I ultimately controlled. 6 months later, at a family dinner I'd agreed to attend, the atmosphere was different. More respectful, more careful, but also more genuine. Maya, Dad said during dessert, the new ownership structure has actually been incredible. Having access to capital, being part of a larger network, not worrying about debt. I should have sold years ago, but I was too proud. Mom watched carefully. Maya, when you bought the company, did you do it to hurt your father or help him? Both, honestly. I wanted him to understand what it felt like to have decisions made without his input, but I also couldn't let those employees lose their jobs if the company failed. Tyler, quieter than usual, finally spoke. Maya, are you happy? Really happy? I thought about it. I'm content. For the first time, I'm exactly where I want to be, doing what I want to do. And us? Stephanie asked. Where do we fit? That depends on you. I'm not the same person who sat here 6 months ago hoping for approval. I don't need you to like me anymore. But I'd like a real relationship if you're interested in knowing who I actually am. Dad leaned forward. Maya, could you teach me about business? About thinking strategically the way your grandfather did? I smiled, and this time it was genuine. I'd like that, Dad. Later, driving home to my estate, I called Alexander. How are you feeling about everything? Different. Better. More honest. Certainly. And are you happy? I pulled into my driveway and looked at the house that started this transformation. I'm proud of who I've become. 6 months ago, I was invisible. Now I'm exactly who I was always meant to be. Your grandfather would be proud too. I hope so. He'd appreciate the chess metaphor. Sometimes you sacrifice pieces to win the game. And have you won? I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Same face but completely different. Stronger, more confident, more genuinely myself. I've won something better than the game. I've won myself. 1 year later, I stood on the deck of my yacht, watching Portland's skyline glide past. The boat wasn't the largest in the marina, but it was perfect. A place to entertain, host family gatherings, and sometimes just escape. The past year had been transformative. I now owned controlling interest in Portland's largest hotel chain, 3 residential developments, and a maritime logistics technology company. My net worth had grown to nearly $2 billion, but more importantly, I'd grown into someone I genuinely respected. That evening, I hosted the monthly family dinner at my house. It had become tradition, these gatherings where we actually talked instead of performed. How are things at the shipping company? I asked Dad. Incredible. The integration with your other maritime holdings opened up international routes we never could have accessed. We're bidding on contracts that would have been impossible before. Mom set down her wine glass. Maya, can I ask something I've been wondering? Do you forgive us? Really forgive us? I considered carefully. I've accepted who you are. You weren't malicious, just blind to possibilities. Your dismissal forced me to find my own strength. If you'd seen my potential from the beginning, I might never have learned to see it myself. So, you're grateful we treated you badly? Stephanie asked. I'm grateful for the journey it started. Grandpa could have just left me money directly. Instead, he gave me something more valuable, the chance to discover who I really was before money changed how people saw me. Tyler, quiet through dinner, finally spoke. Maya, I've been thinking about what you said about earning respect. I've never actually earned anything. Everything came from inheritance. Would you consider giving me a chance at one of your companies? Starting at the bottom, earning my way up? I studied his face, looking for entitlement. Instead, I saw genuine humility. I'd consider it. But you'd start in the mailroom, literally. Treated exactly like any entry-level employee. That's all I'm asking for. After dinner, I walked onto my terrace with Dad. The city stretched below, millions of lights representing millions of lives. Maya, he said quietly, I need you to know something. I'm proud of you, not because of the money or success, but because of who you've become. You're stronger than I ever was, smarter than I realized, and kinder than I deserved. I felt tears welling up. Thank you, Dad. No, thank you for giving us a chance to know the real you, for forgiving us when we didn't deserve it, for being better than we taught you to be. Later that night, I sat in my home office reviewing reports from properties worldwide. Monaco was exceeding projections. Vegas was planning expansion. Singapore was considering a second tower. London was exploring sustainable development. My phone chimed with an email from my foundation director. The William Foster Foundation for Educational Excellence had just announced its largest grant, $100 million to support STEM education in underfunded Pacific Northwest schools. Tomorrow's news would feature me presenting the check, standing alongside teachers who understood that education could change everything for overlooked children. I opened my laptop and composed the press release, adding a personal note at the bottom. My grandfather taught me that the greatest gifts often come in unexpected packages. Today, we're passing that lesson forward to the next generation of dreamers and achievers. I could almost hear Grandpa William's voice. Sometimes the most overlooked person in the room is the one with the most potential to change everything. He'd been right. I'd spent 26 years being underestimated, dismissed, and overlooked. But that experience taught me something invaluable. True worth isn't determined by how others see you. It's determined by how you see yourself. From my office window, I could see my parents' neighborhood in the distance. The small houses where they were probably reading before bed. They were good people who'd made wrong assumptions. The difference mattered. Tomorrow, I had a board meeting for my hotel chain, a conference call with renewable energy investors, and lunch with the mayor about affordable housing. But first, coffee with Charlotte, my former teaching colleague and closest friend. We met monthly to talk about everything except business, a reminder of who I'd been before I knew who I was meant to become. I closed my laptop and headed upstairs, pausing at the window overlooking the city. 1 year ago, I'd been a teacher who thought she'd inherited an envelope. Tonight, I was a billionaire philanthropist who'd inherited the wisdom to use wealth responsibly. The money had been life-changing, but the real transformation was learning to value myself. As I prepared for bed, I thought about children who'd receive scholarships from my foundation. Kids who might feel overlooked in their own families. I hoped they'd learn what I learned. Sometimes the greatest gift is discovering your own worth. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more compelling stories about transformation and resilience. Remember, your worth isn't determined by how others see you. It's determined by how you see yourself. Thank you for joining me on Maya's journey. The most powerful inheritance isn't money. It's the knowledge of your own capabilities.